has anything changed about Hex that's going to stop it from pumping? No, right? But the problem is that there are influencers out there that are immature, right? And they're dumb, okay? Like they're just a lot of them are just stupid, and like they fall for the dysphoria that everyone else falls for. That when the price goes down, they just think it's going to go down forever, and they have no maturity to buy and hold, and they find every scapegoat and everything like that. And there are also people that are looking out there that are out there kind of looking for clout, right? And they know that people want, when people are negative, they want negativity. That's it, right? So when people are negative, they want negativity. And, when they hear people blaming Richard Hart for the pulse chain delay and things like that.
Welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are having a great day. And we open up the video today with a looking at, I believe he goes by the name of Furu Finance. Right, has a YouTube channel by that name, and seemingly is a Hex supporter. Greatly supports Hex, I believe, and was talking about touching on why people were starting to leave Hex, sell their Hex, and buy Zen with it, right? So very interesting comments he had to make. I don't agree with all of them. On this channel, we try to be very objective. We try to have a balanced view, and the purpose of having a balanced view is so we can see all sides and be able to maneuver when we need to, right? Our loyalty is to our financial, the best outcome in our financial situations in cryptocurrency. And sometimes that means we have to see a full view of what's happening in the cryptocurrency and not just our own favorable perception of it. This particular YouTuber, he's kind of speaking to that. At the same time, supporting Hex, right? Which I don't have any problem with any of that. I'm not on. I don't have any negative commentary about Hex or Zen or anything like that. I just look at what's the most practical, best solution. In today's video, I'm going to talk about why I think Zen only works in the short term. I made the same, where I came to the same conclusion about Hex some years back. And I want to be clear in this video to help people understand. This is an attack on Zen or Hex. These can be looked at as advantageous. I think what I'm seeing is that these projects are just advantageous in certain windows, right? For short-term movements, and whereas a lot of them are based on these type of staking systems, where some might stake out to 10, 15 years, I've come to the conclusion that they don't, and this is just my opinion, not financial advice. You guys have to do your own research and come to these conclusions on your own, but I've just come to the conclusion that neither Hex nor Zen are projects that work well in the long term, right? These are just my opinions, and I'm gonna explain some reasons as to why that is in this video. All right. So we're looking at something called the WISE token, right? Now, if you're from the old days, like I say in the videos, I have a lot of proof. I was one of the first channels to talk about Hex. I talked about it in 2018. One of the first channels to talk about the Zen project, right? And so I've been around, right? And I've been monitoring and watching it and profiting a great deal off of these projects. So I know a lot of people will say, well, if you've done well on these projects, why, not just, pump them up so you can pump up my bags and things like that. But what we have to understand, what I've learned in this life is a lot of things are temporary. And I've also learned that, projects that are set up correctly, when you lay the right foundation, those things are going to be around, right? And that's why I created projects like Bitcoin NYK, because it was meant to not be a quick solution to put money in your pocket, but to a practical solution to really solve problems and be long-term solutions for long-term problems, right? And so that's the mindset I have, and that's the mindset of this channel. But let's go ahead and talk about what happened here. So for those of you all who don't remember Wise Token, right? There's an old saying, there's nothing new under the sun. Wise Token is to me, was kind of, in a sense, like the original Zen cryptocurrency, in a sense, based on the principle of it. And so figures like Richard Hart that emerged in cryptocurrency, people who kind of disagreed with Richard Hart's methods after the success of Hex, or the beginning success of projects like Hex, people like Jack Levin weren't the first, right? So we've seen many things like this before. There was a military captain, I believe, of the Army who started Wise Token. And I believe he started Wise Token on the best of intentions, right? And what he noticed is something I found to be true in the cryptocurrency space, and we're going to explain that now, is he noticed that there was something not quite right about Hex, right? And he believed that part of his theory was that someone in the Hex camp, whether it was Richard Hart or whomever it was, right? And I don't have any proof of this, but this was going around a lot. Well, they presented, some proof, but who was doing it was what came up as, they couldn't pinpoint. But anyway, he came up with this conclusion and idea that the reason Hex was working was because the Ethereum that was going into the adoption amplifier, it was being recycled to make it look like Hex was performing better than it was, right? So let's think about that for a moment. People approach me about my project and they say, you know what, it's been going on for years. It doesn't seem to have been successful. It's very slow. The price isn't pumping. And they fail to see that real projects over the long term, they take a long time to set up. And those are the projects I've found to be the most successful, that work the best in the long term. Those projects that start off slow, that take years to develop, that go through many hiccups, right? But anytime you see projects that break out, are successful from the jump, a lot of that raises a lot of red flags. And the reason being is that even if you look at the top 10 cryptocurrencies, what people fail to include in these projects is that many of them started with a ton of venture capital money, right? $150 million, $200 million before anything was built, right? What happens then is they become beholden to these VCs, right? These VCs have propped them up. They are projects created that are too big to fail, in a sense. But what generally happens is they quickly become centralized in the ownership, the control of the blockchain, and many of the first principal ideas go out the window. If you look at something like Wise Token created out of the best of intentions, right? Whereas even the owner, he couldn't control the bulk supply of the Wise Token, right? It was all fairly done. It was audited in a great way. Attorneys coming in, a lot of transparency about how it would run. And as we can see, Wise Token now is on his deathbed, right? Now, some people would say, "Oh, it's because he tried to copy Hex and right, he tried to do this and that." But I think the truth is this Wise Token showed that the first principles of cryptocurrency was a mythical dream. That in reality, most people in cryptocurrency didn't care about first principles. They really cared about just price go up and making money by any means necessary, right? True capitalists, card carrying capitalists, in the worst of the type, the ugly parts of capitalism, what we might look to as corporatism and crony capitalism, all these things that weren't decentralized democracy and idea, that's what people, for the most part, were really after, right? And so anything that was counter to that wasn't going to succeed, and that's what we saw in Wise Token. And I didn't own any Wise Token. I'm not on any side with it, but I was able to observe that Wise Token suffered a great deal when, on paper, it was had all those principles going for it, all the things that people say they wanted, right? Now moving on to Zen, right? Zen kind of comes in with a similar idea in the nobility of it, but if we look at Zen today, what is part of Zen's success? Well, a lot of Zen's success, I think, was based on the idea that Jack Levin was a vampire, right? In a romantic fashion, it would be a great idea to say that Zen made sense and it corrected all of the negative things about Hex, but that's the same scenario with Wise Token, right? And Wise Token didn't ultimately succeed. I think Zen's going to end up on a similar trajectory because at this point in time, I really believe what caused Zen to have some success was the vampirism, as they're calling it, from Jack Levin, just to be wise enough to get in at a vulnerable time in Hex and get the Hex community to kind of back him in a sense, right? Not a community he built so much on the idea of Zen itself, but I think just kind of it was more of an exploit of the Hex community. And that's why the Hex community is so upset with Jack Levin, unfortunately. Now, do I think Zen is an idea? And I want people to be clear that this isn't a rag or on Zen, right? I hold Zen. I like the ideas of Zen. I like the ideas of free cryptocurrencies for the decentralization purposes. But there is a problem in that because it's not just the problem of the cryptocurrency community doesn't really believe in the first principle ideas, but it's in the problem of the structure of Zen, as we'll talk a little bit about. Whereas if you're minting so many free cryptocurrencies and you're inflating them the chain with this cryptocurrency, that what you're going to have is you're going to have this this situation where you're creating this great amount of inflation without the growth to meet it, right? And that was a problem we saw in Bitcoin MYK that we meant to correct very early on. So this inflation is happening in Zen, right? Well, part of the problem is as people are coming in, right? Um, what's happening is they just keep minting and minting the Zen. And I know it after a certain amount you mint less and less Zen, so that's kind of creating similar to the situation what you get with the Bitcoin halving, right? As you're getting less rewards. But I don't think it's possible for the growth of Zen to keep up with that rate of inflation. As to say, even if you look at something like Hex, right? Even if you were to say, uh, uh, we look at Hex as value wise is a great deal more successful than Zen, but even in its period of time, Hex hasn't been able to really get the growth needed to make it a viable product, right? It still struggles. And I believe the reason that is because although these are very high inflationary producing projects, they all fail at onboarding, right? And some of that has to do with technical issues, whether they think Richard Hart's a scammer. I think Zen depends a lot on the Hex ecosystem, and they're limited. What's happening there? Like Zen isn't really creating new users going outside, and like many of the other big chains did, like Ethereum and Bitcoin, they were able to be independent and go out and pull in new people. Whereas Bitcoin, or I'm sorry, Hex and Zen, I don't think they have succeeded at that. In fact, Richard Hart, all of the marketing he has done, whether it's been buying the world's biggest diamond, doing all these things to try to shine a spotlight on Hex and what he's doing there. Although there's been a moderate success, there seems to be a cap on the success Hex can get. And I believe not only is that a problem with many cryptocurrencies, but it's a significant problem with altcoins, right? And unfortunately, when you create heavy inflation, minting, staking, and all of that, and you can't even get the user base in, that doesn't work well with inflation, right? And inflationary products. Now you're looking at something like Bitcoin MYK. What we're doing to contrast that, and this is where I believe somebody like Furu Financial, the opening video YouTuber that we talked about, where he would be wrong in saying free projects because they are free, they don't create any economic value. Where he would be wrong in a sense with that, I think he'd be right about Zen. He didn't mention Hex in that, which I think he should have mentioned Hex in that, but he was targeting Zen. But I think they're both in the same boat. But where he got it wrong with free projects is something like Bitcoin MYK. There's a fixed supply like Bitcoin, like 21 million coins, right? So the problem with that is that the biggest economic problem with gold was that because of the rarity of it, not everybody could get their hands on it. And when you're dealing with a lower supply, that's going to kind of ring true, right? So even if you're able to get it, free, the amount of it really doesn't matter denominationally, because it could be divisible up to like 8 decimal points, right? Like what you get with Bitcoin and so on, right? So that's not so much the issue. The issue is that outrageous supplies don't only work in relation to your growth. That's just like inflation works because you have a lot of economic growth, right? Cryptocurrency, we're dealing on a small pool at these point in time, especially with the altcoins. You're not going to get that, right? And that's a huge issue. Now they're trying to burn like crazy, right? And they got a lot of burning to do, right? To meet a successful rate like we get with Bitcoin and YK, only 21 million coins, or if you had something like Bitcoin that did it, right? So you got a ridiculous amount of burning to do if that's going to save it at all. In the short term, people are getting in the hypes there. Yes, these projects work. It can probably make millionaires out of a fair amount of people, but they meet a threshold. A lot of people believe Zen is going to become like a stable coin in the end. I think it's going to fizzle out. Same thing with Hex. I think something like the Post chain wasn't done to drive the value of Hex up and so on and so forth. I think it's done just so it can survive, right? So it just doesn't completely die out. Because really at the end of the day, these projects, they're dispensers at the end of the day. They're not really significantly creating utility to cryptocurrency. In my opinion, I don't believe so. They sound good. They're good to build hype around in the communities around to a degree, but most of the time these altcoins fizzle out, and that's why a lot of people are just pushing to buy Bitcoin and Ethereum. What sets us apart? Something like Bitcoin MYK, what you can claim with Bitcoin MYK, and it's very slow. It's meant to be that way. Everything's meant to structure-wise to move slow. But I think where Bitcoin MYK, what you can claim with that is moral superiority. And let me help you understand how that works. There is a social engineering in Bitcoin MYK, similar to the early days of Bitcoin. Everybody was giving away Bitcoin free. What was the thing that was really the cohesion holding Bitcoin together? It didn't have anything to do with money in the early days. Nobody knew what it would do money-wise, if it would be anything. The social cohesion that held Bitcoin together was it was this socially driven way to impact society, as to say, this is us taking our money back. Didn't have anything to do with this making you a millionaire or billionaire, right? But if you look at Hex and Zen, what is the number one driving motivator? It's money, right? So you might say, well, what's the difference between Bitcoin and MYK? What's the driving motivator behind it? I'll tell you in one word: ChatGPT. Look at this video from TechLead, why ChatGPT will destroy programmers, right? ChatGPT and other automated technologies are going to take people's jobs away, right? So what Bitcoin NYK is saying, through creating this universal basic income attached to this cryptocurrency, or what we call the citizens dividend, through a fair distribution method with very easy onboarding, you can get a wallet in 30 seconds. It's not this difficult Ethereum interface wallet, and so on. What you're going to have is this moral superior solution, right? That doesn't sound like a scam to meeting the challenges of what technology is going to do to us, right? And getting us out of poverty and so on. So it's a very social, responsible message to fight automation, right? To fight poverty and injustice and crime, right? And many other things that tests have shown and research has shown that universal basic income will do. I can't argue those same points with something like Hex and Zen. And the problem with that, if I can't argue those points, utility-wise, it becomes difficult to even give a compelling reason why the whole Hex or Zen, besides just trying to pump the price, outside of just holding Bitcoin or Ethereum. Because I can do the same thing safely with Bitcoin or Ethereum. The only thing it could do is making a price through some type of, what do you want to call it, manipulation or hype or community outcry. That's the only thing I can argue. And anytime that's the main driving force behind your cryptocurrency, seldom through history they've done well. You look at that coin market cap list from 10 years ago, the top 10 cryptocurrencies aren't even there. These are totally different projects there. And it changes every few years or so, right? The only ones have the stand power are those solid foundational based ones like Bitcoin and Ethereum that kind of encompass all those ideas into one. It's very difficult to get rid of them. So that's why I look at these as short-term projects. I look at something like Bitcoin NYK as probably going to occupy the top 10 cryptocurrency. Now, when will it do that? I don't know if it'll be 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And I really don't care, right? Because it's structurally, it's to set you free, right? It's created to set you free. It's created to keep you out of poverty so you can take care of yourself and your family, right? It's set up for everybody to do that. But it's not set up to make you a billionaire or a zillionaire and drive a Lamborghini, right? If that happens, that would be a plus to it, and it will be a subset of it, or it would be incidental to it. But here's the thing, guys, you got to understand: in creating projects with utility that are designed, that are practical, that make sense, that things that people like Elon Musk are saying we got to do, the greatest mind in history are saying we got to do, that we got to move to some type of form of UBI to, or move into that as we deal with all these advances in technology. Those things create value in money. Those are the things that create billions of dollars, right? This is the kind of level of thinking you got to do. If your only level of thinking is, can I get Zen to 1 cent by the end of the year? Then yes, Zen's going to be a short-term project, right? And again, even though I'm on board with Zen being a free cryptocurrency to a degree, as I can see it hitting some of those principles, structurally wise, it's handicapped itself where it can't do it effectively, right? To me, it looks like it was structured more like Hex, which attracted a lot of Hex community, but Hex in itself, I don't think is structured to be a long-term project, right? And these are just my thoughts or opinions. I love to hear you guys' opinions. I love to have a discussion with you about it. But what can't be argued is many of these first principle ideas based on projects like Hex and Zen, in their pure form, doesn't seem to work with the cryptocurrency community at all. At least I don't think it does. At least I haven't seen any evidence yet that it does. Right. So anyway, and the last good advice I think I would leave for Zen would just be go ahead and launch that Layer 1 blockchain, because the longer it takes, Post Chain could launch any day. It could launch tomorrow. It can launch next week and launch next month. And what's likely going to happen is a lot of that money that's going into Zen, which isn't a lot, liquidity wise, but a lot of it's probably going to go out and back into Post community, right? The Post Chain ecosystem. And I think then Zen will have even less and less money to work for. And I would also move to say a lot of money that's propping Zen up comes over from the Post community. And this is just my analysis of what's going on. I know a lot of people, and I'm not hating on Zen at all. Zen is one of my favorite cryptocurrencies. But, it's a reason we call this channel the education, entertainment, television show. It's because it's not about living on dreams on this channel, but giving you all the information and the tools to make the best possible decisions. I've made my cases what those are and will be in the future. The thousands of people that have joined Bitcoin MYK, not a lot of people, but the people who have, they understand this message, and what I found is people who tend to think long term tend to do better. Now, we're not going to resort to calling people dumb and stupid. Listen, we're just here to help. You make whatever the best decisions are for you. Unfortunately, people from the Hex community don't think that way. The YouTuber Furo Financial, and I haven't really watched a lot of his content. In fact, this was the first video I really watched today, and he was talking about why people left Hex for Zen, right where we're leaving it, and he resorted to calling people dumb and stupid because maybe they weren't doing what he thought they should do. And although I did agree with some of his ideas about what draws people, what successful projects, that's not our way over here. So we're not going to do that. But we are going to say that you might be missing, and this doesn't mean come join Bitcoin MYK, but we're saying that not looking at Bitcoin MYK, you might be missing many fundamental things in cryptocurrency, the structure of it, and psychology that could harm you in the future. Not saying that it's just related to Bitcoin MYK.